I want to introduce our next speaker who's going to be speaking. He's going to be speaking to us. He's running for lieutenant governor. He is the current president pro tem of the Georgia State Senate, which means he has been effectively the understudy for lieutenant governor job for the last few years. So he's getting his practice at running the Senate, and he's here to speak to us today, driven quite a distance. We appreciate it. Mr. David Shafer, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here with you at the Georgia Republican Assembly Convention. I'm a member of the Georgia Republican Assembly, and I was a member of the earlier iterations of the Georgia Republican Assembly when Paul Brown was the leader of it in the early 1990s. I was the executive director of the Georgia Republican Party from 1991 to 1994 and got my start in politics as a grassroots Republican. I've served in the state Senate since 2002 for 15 years, and I'm the president pro tem right now. And that, frankly, is the biggest liability that I face in trying to become lieutenant governor, because surely whenever you've been involved in politics for that long, you are a suspect. But what I would ask you to do is to look at the records. I met Mr. Knox for the first time today. There's two other of my colleagues in the Georgia General Assembly who are also running for lieutenant governor. I would ask you to look closely at our records. Every one of us is going to tell you that they're a conservative. Every one of us is going to tell you that we're for religious freedom and protecting the sanctity of life and the Second Amendment and the host of things that we all know that you agree with us on. And frankly, the other two guys that serve with me in the General Assembly, they are good guys who are conservatives and who, when the voting machine gets unlocked or they're asked to raise their hands, they vote the right way. My pitch to you would be that for the last 15 years, I have been the conservative workhorse in the Georgia General Assembly. I wrote the state's zero-based budgeting law. When I was elected to the state Senate 15 years ago, the budget of the state, a document that is about this thick, when they put it on our desks and asked us to vote on it an hour later, that document only described about 3% of the state's spending, the new programs. And once a new program was approved by the General Assembly, I told this story, people wouldn't believe me. Once a program was approved by the General Assembly and signed into law by the governor, it automatically rolled over into each succeeding budget of the state under a single line item called continuation. And so the budget that we were voting on, 97% of it we couldn't even see. And so the very first year that I was elected in 2002, I introduced legislation that would move us to a system of zero-based budgeting to force them to re-justify the entire budget and not just the new programs. And I introduced that bill again and again and again. We passed it out of the Senate 3 times before the House would pass it once. And when it got out of the House and Senate, it was vetoed by an outgoing Republican governor. And we overrode the veto the next year, and that is the law of the land. And the budgets that we vote on now are rebuilt from scratch, 1/8 each year, so that over an 8-year period of time, the members of the General Assembly are looking at all spending and not just the new stuff. And that helps us be better stewards of your tax dollars. I sponsored a constitutional amendment that put a cap on the income tax. I got it through the House and the Senate, and the voters approved it in 2014 with 75% of the vote. It takes away the power of the General Assembly to increase the income tax. Now, I would like to lower the income tax and get rid of it. But Georgia, thank you, Georgia, thanks to that constitutional amendment, is the only state in the union that has a permanent cap on income tax. We have neighboring states that have lower taxes than we do, but we're the only state in the country where that can truthfully say that the tax rate we have cannot go any higher. I sponsored legislation that was signed into law in 2010 that requires all occupational regulations to be rejustified every 7 years to make sure that they are truly been adopted for reasons of public health and safety and not for reasons to cut out competition. In that same session, I passed a bill that would have required the existence of every state agency to be periodic, to be rejustified every 7 years. A bill that was vetoed by the governor because it was too conservative. But I have been, in the 15 years that I have served in the General Assembly, I have been pushing conservative legislation. I'm the only candidate for lieutenant governor who is rated A+ by the National Rifle Association. I've sponsored 15 bills to either protect or expand our Second Amendment rights, one of which was vetoed by the governor because it was too conservative. I'm the only candidate for lieutenant governor who's been designated a pro-life hero by Georgia Right to Life and a champion of life by the Georgia Life Alliance for my work protecting the fundamental dignity of every human life. I'm the only candidate for lieutenant governor who is A-rated by the Georgia Center of Opportunity, which is a group that's dedicated to promoting the school choice issue. I've been endorsed by Ted Cruz, who called me an unapologetic conservative, something of which I am absolutely guilty. I'm proud to be endorsed by Mike Crane, who I know is one of your leaders. I would ask, talk to Josh McCoon, talk to Marty Harbin, talk to Mike Crane, talk to the men, the conservative Republicans who have served with me in the state Senate, and I believe they will all tell you the same thing, that I'm the person in leadership who has been pushing hard our agenda. I have 30 seconds. I want to tell you, close out with a brief story. Oh no, and it says stop. I won't close out with a brief story. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I appreciate your consideration. Thanks so much for having me.